hope you're doing well. This is Manika Datta from Nutrition Gyan. Wish you a very warm welcome and lots of good wishes for your weight loss journey. I'm sure you'll rock and we'll crack this together. Now, before we get started, before we start with our weight loss process, it's very important for us to understand the basics, to understand the basics of body's composition, to understand the basics of body's fat. What are the different layers of fat? How they are distributed across different parts of the body. What are the different food groups that impact these layers of fat? So how do we differentiate between fat loss and muscle loss? So let's get started. Now, before we do that, please like and subscribe my video so that others can also benefit and you can keep receiving my videos. Now, when we talk about weight loss, we can lose weight. Our body can lose weight in three ways. The first way, by losing its water. So water weight is this typically happens in the initial weeks and not afterwards. And people who have more weight will have more water weight to shed initially. The second way to lose weight is through your muscles. So whenever we try to lose weight in an unhealthy way by starving ourselves, when we have those hunger pangs or energy drops and we are still continuing with our journey, you can safely assume that all you're losing is your muscle. Now, the third way to lose weight is through your fat. So for fat loss, unfortunately, there is no shortcut, and the only way to do fat loss or to ensure fat loss or to ensure healthy weight loss is through a healthy combination of diet and exercise. So our today's discussion, today's video, this video will revolve around the way to lose your fat in a healthy manner, and the entire discussion will be around fat loss. Now we have two layers of fat. One is called visceral fat and the second one is called subcutaneous fat. Now, if you have to understand these two, so cutaneous is a term used for skin. So subcutaneous fat is the fat under the skin. You know, whether it is your cheeks or your bums or your thighs or your calves or your chest or your love handles, tires, whatever we can touch and feel through our hand, that is what is subcutaneous, right? Now, visceral fat is the fat around visceral organs. When we say visceral organs, this is the layer of fat around visceral organs, and visceral organs are typically confined to the abdomen area, like so your stomach, your liver, your intestine. So the yellow, what we can see as yellow on in this image, this is all visceral fat. Now, abdomen area is the only area where we have two layers. Inside is visceral and outside is subcutaneous. Visceral is not something that you can touch and feel through your hand. Subcutaneous is what you can touch through your hands. But typically, the role of visceral is more important and more significant around the abdomen area, around the belly area. Now, the interesting fact about visceral and subcutaneous is that the food groups or the factors which influence visceral may or may not impact subcutaneous. Similarly, what is important and relevant for subcutaneous may not be relevant for visceral at all. So let's understand the food groups or the factors or the influencers which kind of play an important role for both visceral and subcutaneous. Now, when we talk about subcutaneous is governed by how many calories you consume in a day. And out of those calories, what is the amount of carbohydrates you consumed in a day versus how much exercise you did in a day. And now exercise could be structured or unstructured. Now, why are we referring to carbs only? Because carbohydrates is a form, they give us energy, right? So subcutaneous is impacted by how much consumption one did of the raw materials which give us energy versus how much energy we burnt in a day. If we are consuming more energy versus burning, then definitely layers of subcutaneous will get added. On the contrary, if we are burning more and consuming less, then subcutaneous layers will be shedding. So during weight loss, our focus is typically to reduce carbs slightly than what is needed during weight maintenance so that we can shed some subcutaneous. Okay, when we talk about visceral fat, there are four different governing factors. The first one is the fat percentage. When we talk about fat percentage, it could be the fat derived through the different oils that we consume, which could be in the oils in vegetables or the oil in the bakery items or the oil in chilas or eggs, whatever we consume. The other fat percentage could be through the milk products. Now, milk products should not be banned during weight loss, but they definitely need regulation because of the fat percentage. So, milk products need to be regulated, and whatever we consume, it has to be with the minimum fat percentage. Please note that this is relevant only during weight loss, but when we switch to weight maintenance, skimmed products are not suggested. One should switch back to a regular, the toned variety during weight maintenance, but during weight loss, it would be important to check the fat percentage of milk products. The second governing factor for visceral would be the sugar levels. Now, sugar could be not just the sugar that we consume in tea, coffee, or different desserts or mithais, but we don't realize, but we end up consuming a lot of sugar through bakery items or through different junk that we end up consuming here and there. So we need to check all of that. Even the dressings that we have in the market, so they are loaded with sugar. So sugar can come through different varieties and forms. So we need to be watchful of all of that. The third governing factor would be the fruits. Now, fruits are very healthy and have to be part of our diet, but fruit juices aren't suggested and should not be taken during weight loss because the amount of fructose and the amount of carbs really multiply. And unless we play games like football or we are into a lot of sports, which probably is not the case, otherwise, we would not have weight issues. In that case, fruit juices are never suggested. So, eat fruits, whole fruits with the fiber, with the pulp, and no fruit juices at all. The fourth governing factor, last but not the least, is alcohol, which is ethanol, which is the purest form of glucose. So we need to keep that in check. Otherwise, visceral will not go down during the week. Now, a very important question that arises is how do we judge, how do we analyze a visceral fat loss and subcutaneous fat loss? Now, there are two ways. One, you get machines in the market where they're like big bulky weighing machines where you stand and they kind of analyze. There's a very small electric current that passes, and they are capable of analyzing your visceral fat loss and subcutaneous fat loss. Now, that's typically possible only if you have access to a machine or if you're part of an offline program where the machines are available. Now, another way to kind of analyze your visceral fat loss and subcutaneous fat loss is through your inches. Now, inches have been part of the weight loss industry forever, but they've seldom been used to analyze your progress or to analyze your drop around visceral and subcutaneous. So, let's understand this very simple technique. Now, if we look into this hand-drawn figure, uh, whenever you check your inches around your navel area or your waist area, they give an idea whether you're losing visceral, because visceral is all around the visceral organs only, confined to the abdomen area only. When you check your inches around your arms, your hips, your thighs, your chest, this typically indicates that all you're losing is your subcutaneous. Now, going by this logic, one can safely assume that if you're losing inches, that only ensures that you're losing your fat. So, inch loss is a clear indication of fat loss. Now, there could be scenarios where you lost good weight, but there was not much inch loss or there was 0 inch loss. You can safely assume that it's either muscle loss or water loss. Now, if it's the initial weeks, it could be just water loss because water loss typically happens in the initial weeks. Later on, if it is maybe week 3 onwards, then it is typically the muscle loss which could be possible for the weight loss without any inch loss. I hope by now we understand the logic and science behind body fat and body composition, the factors important for healthy weight loss, what should be followed and what should be avoided. In case of any queries, feel free to write to me on my email ID given below. That's all for now. Bye bye and take care.